also forgotten to start recording. So the recording begins now. We will also see the answers to these live. So we have about 2 minutes. Please go ahead and fill these up. Let's see. Okay, I think yes. People should be able to see these 4 questions now. Panelists, can you also see the poll? It would be nice if you guys want to answer this as well.
It says hosts and panelists cannot vote. So.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, my bad. All right, so people are answering. I'm just going to give it a minute or 2 more. Please bear with me.
I'm interested in seeing some of the responses to these. These are good questions.
Yeah. So
Yes.
the first question is, sorry, Bridge, were you saying something?
No.
Okay, so I'm just going to like read them out loud. So the first question is, where do you rate your current test automation maturity? So the test automation maturity is defined by what extent automation is used in testing, how shift left automation is used in development, integration, staging, etc., and integrate with a CI/CD chain. So 1 is low automation coverage, not up to date, used in staging only. 5 is good automation coverage used in staging and integration, up to date after a week, after the new build. 10 is excellent automation coverage used in staging, integration, development, up to date in a day, integrates with CI/CD chain. So almost 50% of the audience says that they have good automation coverage. About 35% say that they have low automation coverage. And about 19%, well, looks like they have excellent automation coverage. So there are still a few people answering. I do not want to take too much time. I've given 2.5 minutes. So please, if you could answer these quickly. So the second one is, what's your greatest challenge with automated testing? So as usual, tests keep breaking, can't run tests quickly enough, lack of test coverage, and lack of quality. So most people say that they can't run tests quickly enough. So makes sense. How soon after your test software build are your automation scripts up to date? So a lot of them are saying up to date in a month. That is, well, there is room for improvement there. And the next one is, what do you think about AI in software test automation? A lot of them are exploring and are interested. A lot of them have just heard about it today. Interesting. You guys are going to learn a lot more. How do you use AI in software testing at your organization? Do you use AI in software testing at your organization? So 62%, most of them say no. 38% say yes. Not bad. I'm not going to spend too much time. I'm giving 15 more seconds and let's move ahead because we don't want to waste too much time on this. Please bear with me, panelists. I'm just trying to push people as much as I can. Okay, I think we are good. I've given 4 minutes and we are moving forward. I'm going to keep the poll on and not end it. So if you guys still want to keep, you know, people who probably join in late can fill in the poll. So now we are discussing AI automation and software testing. We also need to know how software testing was done in the past. So I want to talk about the first, you know, the earliest years of software testing. Let's go back to the early 80s, where there was no real need to scale testing beyond manual. We saw that the user experience did not really exist. It was mainly about clients kind of interaction. And even if, you know, even if we had UI, there was very basic UI stuff. We had a very limited variety of endpoints which we needed to interact with. Again, manual testing was good enough solution for them because the number of tests that were needed to validate were in the tens and hundreds. I would now want to sort of talk to the panelists because I've been talking quite a bit now. So if anybody, any of you guys want to take the next bit, that'll be great.
Are we looking at the 90s?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's me, a child of the 90s. The 90s is the age of the desktop. Of course, browsers were emerging, but we are talking about, you know, the days of Alta Vista, Ask Jeeves, Yahoo. I remember in kind of the websites that were available when I was at school. For a good majority of that decade, the rise of desktop apps follows the rise of the Windows operating system, highlighting just how right Bill Gates was when he said that he would put a computer on every desk in every home, and people laughed. And they did have an initial need for lightweight automation tools, both the early browsers and indeed the desktops, to verify that the apps were working. And I'm sure some of you can remember those forerunner tools in automation from the 90s. I've had a look through them. I'm not going to dwell on them, but some of them are still in use, though their names have changed and the acquisitions and this, but it's quite interesting. It's worth a Google if you're of a certain age, but I won't bore anybody who's younger with it. The next point to make is that apps for browsers were not particularly complex. They didn't push the boundaries of what the browsers and the web was originally designed for. That's not necessarily the case now, but that's probably a debate that we can have elsewhere. The bottom line is apps and test automation's advancements, I think across all of these decades, kind of goes hand in hand. The testing tools that are available in the 90s were enough for what was needed to be tested. I say this broadly. I'm sure there are some people back then who are saying, no, we never had enough time to test and the tools weren't there for us and we were always pushed. But the 90s testers didn't need to keep up with CI/CD. So I think broadly that point stands.
Thank you, Ryan. Let's move on to the next one. Tara, would you like to take this one?
Oh, yes. The age of the new millennium, right? After all of our Y2K scares and all of the crashing, when we realized, wow, maybe bugs are a little bit more important than we had previously realized, and we should be actively hunting them down. The new millennium, that was the beginning of the browser wars and smartphones and all of those things that came along that rapidly changed the landscape of not only just the software that was available out there, but all the different things that we could put it on. Now we had our smartphones coming around and tablets. And I think this is the section where we had to learn the fastest because everything grew the fastest. I know I was never one to adopt the Apple. I went from my flip phone to an Android, probably very late in the game. So it wasn't actually until the end of this time period when I had decided to go back to school that I started messing around with all of the different browsers that were out there and the different applications, and realizing how very incredibly different Internet Explorer was from Chrome, from Safari. And that made me definitely struggle with my testing experiences, because it just became, instead of, oh, I'll run 2 or 3 things and make sure everything's fine and dandy, now all of a sudden those 2 or 3 things are just exponential for every browser and every laptop and every every device under the sun, right? And I think this is about the same time that we started to see things like different methodologies come out. We started talking about Agile and Scrum, and where testing actually fits into all those models, rather than it being just a reactive thing that, oh no, this is going to break tomorrow if we're not careful.
Okay, thank you, Tara. So let's move on to what's happening now, Brijesh.
Well, talking about the last decade, 2010 to 2020, I think the biggest word for me was digital. Everything and everyone wanted to become digital. We saw the advent of, the digital revolution, digital transformation, Industry 4.0. And that's where people started, to take note of that and start working towards it. We saw a proliferation of the mobile platforms. You saw, if you talk about Android devices, you saw a wide variety of Android devices, different screen sizes and different challenges. And what it brought along was, the biggest challenge was scalability. And that was the keyword for me during this decade. And to deal with scalability was just one aspect of it. And then, with following on what Tara said, slowly when, after the 2000s, when people started talking about automation more and more, we saw a trend where, people wanted to venture out and make sure that more and more applications are getting automated, testing, getting more and more, focus, automation getting more and more focus. And that's where we also saw the rise of DevOps. And when DevOps came in, everything changed. People started talking about CI/CD pipelines, things need to be integrated, and automation became an integral part of that. And, everybody wanted to stay focused on that, because people started going with, monthly releases, weekly releases, daily releases, and now hourly releases. In fact, nowadays, there are companies which release, I think, 5 to 6 times within an hour. So, that is sort of the way I look at the last particular decade.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, all 3 of you. So now, when we talk about the future, I just want to say one line is, while, the future holds for us probably many more things, more mobile devices, more endpoints, what we, of course, all agree on is working smarter. And now we definitely need to work, harder, because the world has changed, like you see, from manual testing to, scale, the level of scalability that is there now. And like Rajesh said, that the constant need, and when people are releasing hourly, it's going to get like crazy, and we need to be smarter and smarter as we move forward. So I'm going to not dwell on this and move quickly, because I think I ate up a lot of time during the poll. So I want to quickly talk about, so we know that we need to be smarter and use AI and software testing, but how exactly artificial intelligence, how is it disrupting the market today? So let's talk about, how more than 80% of the businesses say that AI is actually a strategic priority for their businesses. And more than 75% of commercial enterprise applications will use AI by, the end of 2022, as indicated by IDC, which is, we're almost there. And as a result of that, more than 30% of IT professionals worldwide are planning to invest in AI in the next 12 months or so. Please excuse my surroundings. There's an airport right by my house. So these are mainly predictions. So let's focus on what is already happening. So we saw more than 20% of businesses, have already incorporated AI into their processes, products, or services as of today. And more than 60% of businesses say that the pressure to reduce the cost will require them to use AI in one way or the other. And the good news is that more than 50% of executives say that they have already implemented it within their organizations, and it has helped them to increase their productivity. And they, see very strong signs of improvement in efficiency as well. So I think we all sort of agree here, and I would want to quickly jump on to the next slide and talk to you about what AI is. So I'm not going to do a lot of talking. Let me just have all the points here, and then speakers, panelists, please add on your sort of thoughts, please. Anybody wants to go first?
I can find the unmute button. So I love this question of what is AI, because being that 80s and 90s kid that's a total nerd, when I think of AI, I think of like sentient robots, right? And we're not there yet. So I think there's a big misconception about just AI, where it's at, where it's going. I know one of the things that I was reading just last week was talking about 4 different types of AI: the reactive type, where it doesn't have any memory, and kind of where we live now is that limited memory, right? We don't have a conscious mind. We're not self-aware yet. That's hopefully far enough down the future that we don't have to worry about a robot uprising or anything. But I do think it's very important to kind of scale back from that concept of artificial intelligence and realize where we're at, that it's just an umbrella term that talks about, adding a little bit of logic and a little bit of predictability into algorithms, rather than some sentient thing that's going to take over so we can kick back and get a coffee.
Fair enough. Anyone else?
I just want to add to what Tara said. Tara, that's a nice robot behind you, by the way. So I hope you're safe. Okay. Tara spoke about adding predictability, and what I want to add to that is adding efficiency. Okay, I see artificial intelligence adding efficiency to things that you do. By the way, by the means of learning and reinforced learning. So, the system would obviously keep learning all the time, and that's the way it will improve and add to your capabilities by making you more efficient. And that's something that I wanted to add.
Perfect. Thank you. Ryan, do you have anything on this?
No, I suppose I think something that's kind of important to me, and this isn't necessarily in my wheelhouse, but I think it learns, but you also kind of need to teach it. So it has to be implemented really well. If you're a rubbish teacher, you're not going to have very good students. So I think that's kind of, it's not a silver bullet that you just flick a switch and that's it, done. That you've got to make sure you've got implementation right and understand. And that loops right back around to what Tara was saying at the beginning, and that is have an understanding of kind of where we're at and what's possible there.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's move on to the next slide. Here we talk about what the benefits are of intelligent test automation. I'm sorry. So I want to emphasize on speed and AI healing. So the intelligent automation sort of plays an important role in accelerating releases, since it optimizes the whole testing process based on a comprehensive analysis of previous test results. So continuous testing for frequent changes can be, time consuming, but also, AI ML expedites this whole process by identifying the right set of tests and to be executed, thus saving a significant amount of time and resource. We also want to focus on AI healing, like I said. So it's also called self-healing or updation. What it does is it, detecting the requirements changes and impact to test cases and defect and analyzing these defects on script level changes, abnormalities in existing codes, and automatically fixing these without any human intervention, and also knowing exactly what has changed. So it also has another step, which is regenerating the test cases and scripts, where the release notes sort of help in identifying the test cases that need to be healed. Once analyzed, the complete obviously test package is modified on runtime. So there's a lot that you guys know about AI healing. Do you want to add anything else, anybody, with on AI healing? Because you guys are really technical, so I would want to get stuff out from you.
I suppose for me, on the AI healing, and I touch a bit on this later, and we spoke earlier. There's nothing actually to say that if you have perfect processes, that because obviously this is about test automation before and after AI. The before AI tools, if you have perfect processes, a lot of time, and a lot of skill, these things are possible. However, just because you can, why should you? And if you can get a tool, an AI that is able to do these things for you, and I suppose let you go off and find some bugs and do exploratory testing, which is, some of the good stuff, why wouldn't you? It's another tool in your arsenal, I think is what I'd add there. And speed in sprint becomes a reality, not just something that you've got on your strategy that's aspirational, and you're running around at the end of each sprint trying to get everything done.
Absolutely.
If I may just add to what Ryan said. Now, something that we need to understand is, when we talk about automation, especially in relation with testing, we are still, doing a lot of stuff on our own, relying on our capabilities to do them perfectly or more efficiently. However, there is always a quest for going from automation to autonomy. You want to get your test automation to be running autonomously. And that's what most people think in their minds when they talk about automation, thinking that, oh, it will do everything on its own. It will not, because you will obviously, like Brian mentioned in the previous point, you will have to teach it and it will learn and it will do. But once you get there, it will definitely add value. So that's something that I wanted to mention here as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brajesh. Tara, would you want to take the next one, please?
Sure. So when you talk about improved risk and reliability and all of those things, I think it's really important to weigh in the needs that you want from your automation versus the tools that you're using. Not every tool is going to do exactly what you want it to. I love that we were talking earlier about, if you've got a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That was just absolutely perfect a lead into this, because it really comes down to, are you using the right tool and the right intelligent automation to take away those recurring tedious tasks? Are you focusing on the aspects that you need to teach it the things that you need to teach it, to make it a good system, rather than just kind of throwing darts at a board and hoping it learns? Humans have the benefit of doing 5 or 6 tasks and being able to say, oh, this has nothing to do with this. But when you're talking to and teaching a computer, it's just going to take it all at face value. So you've got to be able to give it that accuracy and aim it towards what you want it to.
All right, thank you. We have two more points. Either Brijesh and Ryan, you guys have the floor. Any
Okay.
extra?
Okay. So, talking about deeper insights into test results and predictive analysis. I mean, this is very important. Now, before I talk about that, I want to talk about something. A lot of us, or a lot of the testers, are stuck in the in sort of a rabbit hole, because their minds are still focused on just bugs. Now, testing is not just about bugs; it's about identifying those risks, and you can achieve better risk profiling with AI, and that is something that helps you in identifying your risks early and finding a mitigation. Okay, that's number one. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is of course the insights. So with all the capabilities and the analytics that AI can bring in, it will result in you getting your information much better. For example, if you look at an AI-enabled report, a test report, you can very easily find out defect clusters in your product, the areas which are getting used more, the areas which are impacted most by a particular bug, and that's where you need to be paying your attention to. That's where you need to be focusing on, and that's where your energy can be directed to, so that you get better results. Okay, and yeah, these are the couple of points that I wanted to make.
So I think I may be using slightly different terminology here to say very similar things. So I kind of looked at this bit from a root cause analysis perspective, because that's something that I'm kind of familiar with, and kind of that defect cluster, and being able to go in and see where that root cause is, and equally being able to kind of collaborate with the development team on the bugs, being able, because they're able to find much more information in there and extract it, means that there is much closer collaboration. And then equally, you're able to say whether it was right or wrong. Did it get it right? Did it get it wrong? And then it learns, and the more people adopt this kind of process, the quicker we will get there and have the insights that have been mentioned out.
Great, thank you, Ryan. Before we actually get into Q&A, there's one quick live question that we've got. We just covered AI healing. Can someone sort of talk about it for someone who's a newcomer? Maybe they don't know what AI healing is. If you guys could elaborate on that.
So I suppose let's give an example of how it would be done before. You wouldn't use an XPath because they're notoriously flaky and brittle. But you may use an ID, but they're to identify an object. So if you think of like a CTA, I'm marketing, so it's always going to be book a demo on your web app. The ID, but then there are dynamic IDs. So then you've got other attributes that are listed. You could go image-based, but I'm going object-based. And then you find out which attribute is best to work out that's not going to change, but then you are relying on it not changing. What a lot of these AI tools do is dive into the DOM, extract all this information, build models, and then on every test run, they run it through what I'm familiar with is a machine learning algorithm that looks to see if that object has actually changed. If it's an unexpected change, okay, the XPath's changed, but everything else is the same, is a really simplistic example. And it can also do that with degrees of certainty. So this is a very this is 99.9% sure. That's probably a bit of an exaggeration. That this is not an unexpected change, which means you don't have kind of flaky tests. You don't have to be constantly maintaining them because the AI does that for you. And again, back to I seem to be laboring the same point. You're able to say whether it was correct or not. So it's constantly learning and getting better and better. I hope that was answered the question in both a non-technical but technical enough way.
Yes, thank you. Anybody else has anything to add? Okay. Yes, we've got 20 minutes. Let's move on to the Q&A session. Ryan, when we had our first conversation, you did talk to me about your history and how you are, there was a mind shift. So I want you to take this question and I want you to talk to us about the difference between traditional automation and AI testing. And also, of course, tell us your story.
Okay, so the company I work for now is AI augmented test automation, and back in 2020, I received a LinkedIn message asking me to come and have a look at this codeless AI augmented test automation tool, and I thought, yeah, that's never going to work. Your levels of attribution are just miles away. We're not ready for this yet. You can use a recorder, but you're still going to have to use code with it. And then I saw the tool. And there's other tools out there. I'm not just saying this one. I've seen a shift in the way that kind of analysts are looking at things, from Gartner to Forrester. There's just been maybe I was possibly late to the party, but I do think there's been a massive shift. And I think it's because people have seen, look, test automation hasn't existed in a vacuum. People have seen how AI, machine learning, etc., have done amazing things in other fields, and that it works. So now that it's being brought into test automation, I think that people are starting to see that and I think that's the big point: scalability and speed. Testing's always kind of been seen as the poor relation, always the bridesmaid, never the bride in the software delivery life cycle. But I think that that's actually changing. I think that shift left and in sprint is not just something that people talk about and have done since about 2003, was it? It's actually something that's meaningfully possible if done in the right way. None of this is to say that it hasn't been done. It doesn't have to be done in the right way. And it is, I suppose, it's just getting, for me, it's having tools that are intelligent enough to work. That's bottom line, isn't it? We want them to work.
All right, thank you. On this, I actually want to sort of talk about the Gartner sort of published a study last year where they were talking about intelligent test automation. It sort of provides massive potential for greater productivity and efficiency in application testing, and of course lower cost. So they talked about a bunch of things like model-based testing, where you generate test cases and test scripts from a model to sort of expand your automation coverage. We also talked about test optimization. So it sort of recognizes the repetitions and similarities in test cases and test scripts, and it optimizes test case repositories. They also were talking about defect prediction, how do false positive occur. So if you're maybe running around 300 test cases, about 30% of these test cases are going to fail. And that's about 90 test cases that are coming back as failed. But 92%, that is 83 test cases of the tests of these test cases are false positives. So it blew my mind when I figured and saw those connections and figured out that it's only 8% of those false positives were actually true failures or true bugs. So it was something that really struck by me. Defect predictor tools, of course, the realization that happened was they can save hours of your time and your client's time, of course, and it sort of correctly diagnoses your false positives in software test automation. I've seen tools where I've run these without any technical background, and I could see those results, which is, I think, brilliant. But that's just a story of mine. I'm gonna go back to question number 2. Let me just see the screen. So, okay, so the second question is, what are the business values that AI testing brings over traditional automation testing? Anybody want to take this on?
I can answer that for you, Ashwini. Business value of AI testing over traditional. Okay, so let me begin first by addressing one big thing. So by its nature, and this is in my opinion, that traditional test automation, I can say, is reactive in nature. And that's, we look at something and we see, okay, we have to automate this, then we think about what can be done about it. We set plan, okay, do our feasibility analysis, and then, take it up from there. However, with AI, what you can do with your automation is move it in the direction of proactiveness. Now, with the capabilities that we discussed, for example, adding predictability, for example, being able to nail down the problem soon enough, you are giving it the edge that is actually required for it to be proactive. Okay, and as far as business value is concerned, one of the biggest needs for the customers right now is to make sure that they deliver their product at speed, at scale, right? And if you have to meet that expectation, then you might as well be more proactive compared to being reactive. So, Ryan was just mentioning about, defect predictor, or in fact, you were mentioning about defect predictor. And if your tool has that kind of a feature, or something that even I mentioned, that, if you have that ability to detect the defect clusters, imagine how easy the life of engineers would become and how quickly they'll be able to turn things around, and thereby giving it the necessary speed, making it, and I've been saying this, making it a lot more efficient. So, they will definitely bring in a lot of cost saving, which is a direct advantage. So from a business value point of view, this is what I think.
Thank you, Brijesh. Let me move on to the next question. So this is slightly interesting, and it's obviously, we can't give exact numbers, but how long do you think it takes with traditional automation to create 2,000 test cases and test automation scripts? And how long do you think it would take with AI automation? Anybody?
I got you on this one. So obviously it depends on the test cases themselves, right? The more complex, the harder it is to script. I have tested, or I've written scripts that have taken anywhere from an hour to script out by hand to months to script out by hand. And of course, it depends on if you've got tools and things like that. I have written my own frameworks. I've used frameworks like Selenium and of course Provar, since I work there. And those things can add that speed up a lot faster when you're actually start using tools and not just having to crank out code by yourself. But it could take you forever. And if you're already starting in tech debt, like most of us QA do, it's like a never ending, I'm never going to catch up. I'm never going to be able to be proactive. One of the things that I love so much about using the AI automation is a lot of it comes down to you can do it as quickly as you can navigate through that page. So as long as you have things rendered and you can click that button, that's how long it takes to script it. It comes down to those low code, no code things that I remember 10 years ago rolling my eyes at thinking, oh gosh, this will never work. I'm going to end up having to script it all by myself anyway. To now I rely on it every day because I can go through 2,000 test scripts in a month instead of one test script in a month. And then when you start to add in things like the healing, then my maintenance cost has gone down. So I don't have to go back and rewrite that script and try to figure out what went wrong with it. And the time that you save is just exponential.
Exactly. Yes.
My
Thank-
instinctive response to that question was forever. like Tara said, but of course it depends on the context, it depends on the complexity, it depends on a lot of factors. So yeah, I agree with Tara.
I've got a question. This is an open question. I think relates into it, but I'm not the tester. Because the test scripts themselves, best practice is to keep them short. And so I'm wondering whether you think that that is best practice regardless of whether you've got an AI tool or not. And so and the reason I'm asking that question is kind of just putting an arbitrary number of 2,000. It's not necessarily there because, as everybody's rightly said, kind of, you know, do we keep, but are we able to have longer scripts with AI, or you think that that best practice still has to be kept? And I know sometimes you will need to do full end-to-end scripts. I get it, but
I think I've seen some cases. Oh, go ahead, Bridget.
No. Go ahead, please.
Well, I know that I've seen some cases where I really want to test the stuff on page 4 of a 5-page configuration, but in order to automate it, I have to get there, right? So I have to go through what hopefully doesn't crash on page 1, page 2, page 3, just to get to my test that I actually want to do on step 4. And without the ability to seed those things in or abstract them out into callable tests and things like that, that's where that holy cow complexity of it took me a month to script it by hand, because I had to make sure that I could get all the way down that path to the part that I actually wanted to test, and hopefully nothing crashed or broke or anything before that.
I was also going to say something similar to what you just said, Tara, because it is a question about the dependencies that you are trying to deal with, okay, and then to get to that point, how much effort do you need? Because one, you are looking at a particular page or a particular event which you want to test, but how do you get there? Okay, do you need supporting scripts to get there, or is there any other way to just sort of test it independently? So you have to look at it, and only then you will be able to decide whether what's the best approach. I agree with you, Ryan, that the sort of good practice, I don't use the term best practice, good practice is to keep it as your scripts as short as easy to execute. But then, of course, when you're talking about such a large number, you have to obviously take into consideration the various dependencies, the various workarounds that you might have to go through to get to where you want. So that's where the challenge lies.
Thank you, Rajesh. We have one time for one more question, maybe another. So how long would it take to update an automation suite of 500 task scripts with a new software build? Similar to the previous question, does anyone want to take this on?
Well,
I'm gonna have a first stab.
sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
I've got a kind of a traditional answer to this, and it's kind of it depends. You know, does the tool have an integration that means you can just swap it over? I think my answer to this would be, do you know how much redundancy you've got in that in those test scripts? How clear is what's going on there? And entertain the idea of, well, the speed at which I can author with an AI tool is so fast, and I've got the opportunity now to revisit kind of what's in that test suite. And I'd keep that as a consideration. I appreciate I have in no way, shape or form answered the actual question, but just to give my 2 cents on it.
Thank you. Anybody
Okay,
else?
yeah, so again, instinctive response forever, but but you know, looking at it, you know, so if your tool that you're using is capable of identifying what has changed, okay, then your life becomes very easy. And that's where, you know, AI comes in. Okay, so it is there to sort of look at what has changed, do a comparative analysis, and tell you that, okay, this is what has changed from the last build. And, you know, this is where you need to focus on in terms of testing. And, you know, that's where you need to develop your scripts. But with a lot of tools, the AI capabilities not being there, it's going to take you a long time, again, because, you know, first step, you have to identify what is new. Secondly, you know, what is breaking because of a certain change that needs to be tested and focused. What is the impact of the change that is happening? That is, again, need to be figured out. So there is a lot to figure out, but with AI capable tools, your life becomes very easy.
Perfect, British. Thank you. We have 4 more minutes. Can we take one more? The next question is there any tool available in the market with auto healing capabilities? Yes, in automating API testing, like healing my scripts when my assertion fails or response data fails on response data. I mean, it's a little bit more technical from my understanding, but Udaya, we are trying to sort of refrain from tools, like naming tools and stuff. So feel free to connect with us one-on-one, and the panelists will be more than happy to sort of give you an idea on that.
The answer to that is yes. For Udaya. Is there a tool? Yes, there are many tools. There are many tools. Some are more capable than others, but yeah, there are tools. And they exactly deal with the kind of problem that you've mentioned. For example, healing your scripts when the assertion fails on response data. So, yeah.
Perfect. One last quick question. For software developers, AI automation or intelligent test automation can help in them shifting left. What is the question? I do not understand. So maybe they're asking if AI automation would help them shift left. Quick question, if anybody could answer this in like 2 or 3 minutes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
By shortening the amount of time that it takes for you to get through, write a test, run a test, you're automatically shifting left. Then it just becomes a matter of procedure rather than time constraints.
Perfect.
There are also tools out there that you can now automate using wireframes. So it's a leap left as opposed to just a shift.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And I think we have about 2 minutes left. I'm going to stop sharing. I want to have like a little bit of a FaceTime on the screen, so I'm able to edit the video better. But I really wanted to thank you all for taking out time from your busy schedules. I really appreciate all your inputs and all the information that we got today. And I will, as the sort of session ends, I think in a couple of hours, I will send the recording. Please feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues. But just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of you.
Thank you for having me, and it is always nice to interact with Tara. Of course, I've been interacting for. This is the second time in this week, Tara.
Yes.
And Ryan, of course, great conversation. So thank you so much, Ashwin, for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I appreciate it.
No
Thank you.
problem.
It's been an absolute blast.
Thank you so much. We have a minute to spare, so not a lot, but again, thank you so much. I'm going to send a recording to you guys as soon as possible, and you guys have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.